Line training is the crucial final step for new pilots transitioning from flight training to the real-world demands of commercial aviation. In this episode, we're going to explore how it's designed to prepare pilots to operate within an operator-specific environment and manage live scenarios with confidence, but also why it's becoming such a struggle for Part 135 operations. All that and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Good morning, 3614, Alpha Mallow 7 POB with altitude.
Coordinating, Halen, I'm running bank balance, bank pressure rolling at 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there. Set by star 9000, 1013, Kilo 25.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 153 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. No matter where you are, whether you're on the ground, studying hard, up in the air, flying, this is the podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, I'm your host, Trent Robinson. Thank you again for joining me for another episode. Well, staff Christmas parties are alive and well. I've had the pleasure of being at a couple now, had a great time. If you're having yours, if you've already had it, well done. If you've got yours coming up, don't do anything silly. Christmas parties have a knack for bringing out the best or worst of us in sometimes. But go have some fun, blow off some steam. But yeah, stay safe, look after your mates, and make sure you'll get back to work nice and safe when the time comes. If you've got some time off for Christmas, have a wonderful, safe time. If you're doing some flying, have a great trip. If you are working, thank you for flying people around on Christmas Day, being away from your families so others can be with theirs. And yeah, it's definitely a busy time of year in the air. And it's certainly one of those times of year, I guess, where aviation really comes into its fray with bringing people together, which is just fantastic. So be safe, everybody out there. I will be back for one more episode, though. It sounds like I'm saying goodbye until Christmas, but I'm not. We'll be back next week, so don't worry. All right, well, look, I'm not going to waste too much more time getting into today's episode. If you've been watching online, you would have noticed I've been doing some line training lately with Air Frontier, one of the many operators up here in Darwin. And it's been fantastic getting to meet the team and work with them. I'm looking after their IFR operations now, and that's giving me a chance to help train the new upcoming IFR pilots with their line training, help raise the standards, improve the quality of the aircraft and everything else. And the response within the team has been fantastic. And I'm really, really pleased to see suggestions, ideas, and everything being supported, listened to, and acted on. So really good time. And it's been fantastic to get back out to parts of the territory that I just haven't been to a while, really, since I left Care Flight. So it's been great to get back to those locations. Now, I've used the word line training a few times, and I know when I talk about line training and check flights and proficiency checks and things with some of you contacting me about the GA transition course, etc., you've not really been that familiar with what it all means. So what is it exactly? Well, it's a long induction, if you like, covering everything from your paperwork, where to get in the building and how to secure it, right through to dealing with passengers, dealing with unexpected challenges. It's building your skills, your experience, if you're not familiar with the area, the location, the weather, that sort of thing, and just help build that mindset required to safely and effectively integrate into a fast-paced world of charter flying, really. Things can go smoothly, things can just get thrown at you, and you are the one to deal with it. All right, but before I fully go into what it's all supposed to be and what is actually taking place at the moment, I want to just take a step back and discuss what comes before line training, and that is the commercial pilot license training. Because if I do that, it will do two things. A, it's going to help you understand what line training isn't, and if you're an instructor, I want you to listen up, because this is going to help you with the training delivery that you are giving either now or in the future. So, a bit of a crazy question, but what is the purpose of CPL training? Well, I'll tell you what it's not. It's not to get more hours than a private pilot license. It's not to graduate when you hit around 170 hours either. Right? The purpose of a commercial pilot license is to prepare pilots to operate aircraft proficiently and safely in various commercial aviation roles. Keyword there being various. Right, so this training goes beyond the foundational skill of private flying, focusing on advanced knowledge, skills, judgments required for a career as a pilot. And various commercial roles is the key. You don't necessarily know where your student is going. They might be in the airlines one day, but that's anywhere from 900 hours these days to 1,500 hours plus away. All right. There's a number of roles that could happen between now and then. They could be going into charter. They could be going on as an instructor. They could do into aerial work. Many, many different roles and things that they could be doing. So we need a nice, broad, cross-sectional syllabus to help deal with this, unless we are in an airline-style cadet program. But even then, Australia is still not set up properly to take straight out of a airline graduate training program into an airliner. Now, some people are doing it and make it, but the vast majority of graduates do not. And so they are then ill-equipped to go out into general aviation environments. So let's have a look at what the CPL training should be doing. All right. Some of the key purposes are, firstly, preparing for professional aviation roles. Right, so the CPL qualifies pilots to be employed and paid for their flying skills in a large variety of roles, such as I've said, charter flying, agricultural operations, and instructing. Right, it's a crucial step towards the higher roles in aviation, including airline transport operations. So we need to enhance aeronautical decision-making, or ADM as it's sometimes referred to. CPL training, it emphasizes, or should be emphasizing, situational awareness, risk management, making sound decisions under pressure. All right, pilots need to be trained to assess and mitigate operational risks, which is essential in commercial operations. Now, I know a lot of you instructors listening out there are beautiful, good, kind people, but you're doing too much. And I keep saying this. Instructors are stepping in too soon. Now, I hope everyone's got their big boy and girl pants on, because I'm going to get a little bit down and truthful today. We need to stop worrying about upsetting students. Now, what I mean by that is not to suddenly become a prick, but we are there to do a job. We all know that Murphy is out there waiting to just throw a spanner in the works and cause trouble and chaos. Sometimes it's just a little thing. Other times it's much bigger. The end of the day, that is what your student is going to have to deal with by themselves. This is what you, yourself, based on the training you've received, may need to deal with by yourself. All right. There is too much pandering going on, worrying about students and what they're going to have to worry about with the flight, and is it too much and too stressful and all that. We need to stop worrying about that and training them in a safe, comfortable, as far as the process goes, environment, so they have the skills to deal with these things. All right. And like I say, I am not advocating to be horrible, to set up unrealistic scenarios and training practices. That's not what I'm saying at all. But we've got to stop pandering to, look, I'm probably getting in trouble for all this, but I don't know if wokeness is the word or whatever it is, but dealing with everybody's emotions and things, we've got to go soft and gentle, because that's not what's going to happen in real life. There is a time and a place. We can simulate these things. We can work through these things together. And if it's not working well, great. Then we back off and we work through it as a training exercise, and we'll set up another scenario another day. But we need to stop pussyfooting around and just almost, patronizing our students with kindness when that's not what's going to necessarily happen in real life. Sure, most of the time it will. It's all great. And then we're lucky because we get away with it. But push come to shove, this could be the difference between saving a life or lives or not. All right, we need to develop advanced flying skills. Pilots learn to operate more complex aircraft, eventually moving on to multi-engine and turboprop aeroplanes. Right, this training's got to include advanced maneuvers, precision flying, handling the aircraft at the performance limits, pushing outside or towards the outer limits of the envelope. Right, max takeoff weight, takeoffs. Sounds crazy. What does everybody do? Take off hundreds, if not thousands of kilos less than the takeoff weight available in the aeroplane. Next minute, they're off flying with freight and passengers and not used to the weight at all. Keep dropping out of the sky, hitting the ground hard, getting punished when they haven't maintained speeds and precision approaches. These are the things that are very, very simple that we need to be able to do. And these are the skills that we need to instill in our students right from day one. As I keep saying, a 172 is not a particularly challenging aircraft. Doesn't really need a checklist. You could fly the whole airplane and probably not miss anything. But it's not about that. It's about setting these skills and standards and expectations and disciplines so that when they move on to more complex aircraft, they have their systems in place. They're used to doing checks at this point. All they're doing is changing the content of the check. All right. So we need to enforce those checklists. We need to enforce those procedures. We need to maneuver the aircraft accurately. Right. A lot of the maneuvers we do in flight training, you probably never use in normal flying. I get that, but that's not what it's about. These things called chandelles and lazy eights and other maneuvers, slow flight, performing right on a stall buffet and all that sort of stuff. That's not what we'd normally do, but it teaches you control. It lets you fly the aircraft outside the normal operating envelope. So you've got more skills and handling to give. Commercial pilots should have a master understanding of the regulations and operational knowledge of their aircraft and company operations. Right? So CPL training should ensure that pilots have a thorough understanding of the rules, the regs, where to go find it, and the operational procedures of their training school. Right? They're not going to have SOPs for an operator. They should be using the SOPs for the flight school, and that's what should be upheld and held accountable by. Right? But this moves on as well to operating in various airspace and the management of that flight planning, performance calculations, weight and balance, truly understanding what they're doing and why and what it all means. I can't tell you the number of times I'll say, what's this mean on a flight plan? And nobody knows. Yet they've been submitting God knows how many flight plans before that one, all with the same information on it, just as one example. One of the things that they don't get to do very often in commercial training, but is a very key part of what they're about to do, is how to build customer and crew interaction skills. All right. So as a student, they're going to deal with us as an instructor and the reception staff at the flight school and the like, and maybe the engineers and things. Right. But pilots need to be trained in communication, both on the radio with air traffic control and with passengers or clients, showing their professionalism. They need to be clear, understood, approachable, instill confidence in their passengers. All right. Understanding these CRM principles in a small school environment, ready to go into a bigger one, is integral, especially for roles involving multi-crew operations at a later date. But in for single pilot operations, we've got crew resource management, it could be company resource management. Their interactions with operations staff, with engineering, with instructors, the head of operations, etc., the clients and members at the flight school maybe, all of that can lead to avoiding issues with aeroplanes and flight planning, safety, and all this sort of stuff. Ultimately, they need to meet the industry standards and certifications. Right, so the commercial license it's a global license. You can fly commercially anywhere. Australia is accepted in most countries with some conversion training as always. Right, but it meets a high Australian/international standard. Right, it's the stepping stone for commercial pilots now to get other endorsements, ratings, other qualifications, and eventually move on to the ATPL and airline environment if they so choose. So ultimately, that CPL training is aiming to create a competent, confident, and responsible pilot who is capable of safely and efficiently conducting commercial flight operations within their limits and experience. That's what we need to be doing. With that, we can then take somebody into a commercial environment, and the purpose then is to induct them and put them through a line training program. So line training after gaining employment as a pilot bridges the gap between that theoretical, practical, and simulation training in flight school to real-world operational flying. It equips the new pilots with the skills, experience, and confidence required to perform their role effectively within a specific airline or organisation. Now, while a lot are going to be very, very similar, everyone's got their own little differences, and that's okay. That's what the line training's for, to teach you this is how we're going to fly the 210 or the Navajo or the Baron or whatever it is. So that's what line training is there for, and that's why we have programs like the GA transition course, which is to bridge the gap. It's to cut the cord, as I say, from flight school and create and develop that independence. So line training, some key objectives. Firstly, operational familiarization. So it's going to introduce pilots to the company's specific operating environment, their routes, their procedures, the personnel, all the paperwork and what needs to be done and how the aircraft's being prepared, local weather patterns, terrain, airspace complexities that they might encounter on the job, specific to the area. And how to integrate the SOPs or the standard operating procedures. So it's going to reinforce the company's SOPs for all phases of flight, including ground operations, takeoff en route, approach and landing. It's going to ensure that pilots can execute these procedures effectively while adhering to the company's safety and efficiency standards. And this is what it's all about. All right, like I said, you might like to fly at 80 knots on base. We do it at 75. That's just what the SOP is. So that's what you need to learn. There's no point kicking up and going, well, at this place I do this and all that the other. I said, that's great. If you want to fly at 75 knots or 80 knots or whatever I said before, you can go back there if you want to. All right, that's what SOPs are for. They've been designed and set up for a reason. Are they always perfect? No. But there's a way and a means to go about correcting them and changing them. We can talk about that another day. All right, it's the real-world application of the skills that you've learned in flight school. So it provides an opportunity to apply skills learned in training to live operations, including handling passengers, cargo, unexpected events, dangerous goods. All right, pilots' experience with real-time air traffic control, varying weather conditions, and operational time pressures. These are all things that you're going to have to deal with and you're going to have to make decisions. And sometimes there's not, well, I can guarantee there's not going to be an instructor sitting next to you, but there's not going to be someone to ask all the time. Right? So this time is now part of making that decision-making process more comfortable, making you a truly independent operator, knowing where your boundaries are to make that decision by yourself. And when you do need to then pick up a phone and call for approval or clarification or whatever from somebody else in the organization, usually the HOFO or the senior base pilot, for example. All right, it's to build confidence and experience, give new pilots supervised experience under the guidance of a training captain, allowing them to develop the confidence in making these decisions. All right. You might get it wrong. It doesn't matter. You have made a decision. A learning outcome will come out of it and you'll know better for next time. All right. Hopefully it's the right one. But if it's the wrong one, we live and learn. The key then is to not repeat it. This will enable pilots to gradually transition from a trainee mindset to a fully operational, I am the pilot in command mindset. Right? Safety and risk management. So this trains pilots to handle operational challenges, including abnormal and emergency situations within the company's safety framework. It encourages proactive risk identification and mitigation in real-world conditions. This is your real threat and error management. This is not just some little chore thing we do and put on the board, right? There are real risks: wind, weather, crosswind, wet runways, wildlife, thunderstorms, dodgy aeroplane parts, whatever it is. All right, we need to make decisions and decide what we're going to do and whether we're going to fly today. But ultimately, this all leads to then the evaluation and certification. So the line training provides a structured period during which a pilot's performance is evaluated to ensure they meet the company SOPs, the safety standards, and then successful completion of that line training will then allow the pilot to work independently as a fully qualified crew member of that company until such time as their next training event comes up. And that is usually 6 to 12 months later. So in essence, line training ensures that the pilots are not only technically proficient, but also operationally competent and fully integrated into the company's culture, the procedures, and the safety standards. That ensures as much as possible that they are safe and competent to handle the paying public and the duties and responsibilities bestowed upon them. So it's a pretty solid system, hey? Well, I agree, if it was all working that way. But what's really taking place? Well, commercial training seems to have become more of an accumulation of somewhere around 150 to 200 hours of flying around the sky. An overabundance of acronyms and mnemonics trying to be more airline orientated without actually knowing how to work and run checklists. Over restrictive training practices in what weather and conditions pilots can fly in. Not allowing pilots to hire aeroplanes and go flying by themselves. Inexperienced instructors innocently thinking they are doing a good job based on what they've been taught. Producing ill-equipped commercial graduates thinking that they also know what they're doing. Schools, instructors, and examiners refusing to accept modern technology and embrace and teach it. We are not producing pilots in full command. We're producing pilots in semi-command. Now, pretty harsh. Maybe a bit of a generalization and unfair to many schools, instructors, and examiners out there. I accept that. But I need you guys to start listening if you're not already. All right, there is some great flying schools out there. There's some fantastic training going on and excellent standards as well. There are some instructors out there who know they are not doing a good job and they have been led up the garden path and they've been let down themselves and they are now starting to ask questions and seek better training and better influences. And this is what we need. All right, Australia has always been known for its high quality of training delivery. However, as I've been saying for some time now, unless you're new to the podcast, the current intake of pilots over the last 24 months or so are falling short of the standard and it must change. All right, we need to get back to practical flight training delivery. The problems that we're having in line training, which I'll get to again in a sec, all stem back from the initial commercial training. We need to get back to that practical flight training delivery. Practical. What we do is fly an aeroplane. It's a very practical task. Okay? The CASA training syllabus is based on a competency outcomes-based training delivery. All right? Competency-based training means the training should reflect the tasks that a pilot would do in real life, i.e. the workplace. It's crazy, isn't it? It's not go out, do a couple of turns and a forced landing, then turn around and come back again. Right? It needs to be scenario-based training. It needs to be simulated charter events. It can be a mixture of tasks and general handling and airwork. That's absolutely fine. The whole flight sector doesn't necessarily have to be a complete recreation of a possible training environment. All right, we've still got to do general handling and all that as well. I accept that. That's not a problem. But the overall nature of the flight, the way it's planned and structured and presented to the student, can be a typical charter style scenario. Right, it goes a long way, scenario-based training, a long way to producing a competent and a capable pilot ready to take on line training. And in the podcasts and the chats and the presentations and the webinars that I've been doing, some people, instructors, have never heard of scenario-based training. And that, to me, frightens me. It's a term that's not new. I was doing scenario-based training or SBT back in the 90s. Okay, so this has been around a long, long time, but somewhere along the way it's been lost. Now, some flight schools or instructors just have the attitude of you will learn that on the job, not understanding what line training is all about. Right? They seem to believe that they're just there to get the CPL training done and out of the way, and you'll get taught that when you get the job. How to do the job, yes, but not how to land an aeroplane and how to maintain height and how to think for themselves. We'll develop the thinking part. I'm fine with adding that in there. But why do we have commercial pilots that just struggle to fly an aeroplane? It should take a few hours to convert across to a 210. Right now, it's putting a massive burden on company budgets and training budgets with already a huge turnover of pilots due to the recruitment and training. All right, what kind of burden am I talking about? Well, a CPL component in a typical training syllabus is around 30, 40 hours. That's what they're doing in line training. 30, 40, sometimes up to 75 hours. All right, so probably I would be quite comfortable to call it around a 50-hour average in some places. Right? That's the CPL component of the whole training syllabus all over again. So what the hell is going on in the CPL training that a CPL graduate cannot fly straight, track in a straight line, plan atop a descent, work their way to another destination and land the aeroplane properly? All right, because it's not what's happening. It's a struggle. This is why the GA ready courses, the GA transition courses, all this proficiency check stuff that's going on is existing now, because everyone's tried just hiring off resumes and putting them through the program and it's not been working. And now companies and organizations are having to insulate themselves, I guess, and assure themselves a little bit of only taking on pilots who have already demonstrated that they can do the basic functions. They don't need to be perfect. They don't need to know everything. That's learned on the job. Absolutely. But the basics of a CPL graduate competency must be there, and they're not. All right. I've talked about all this in episode 122. So I'm not going to repeat all the other things, but if you haven't listened to that episode, that's when I first really sort of call out what's going on. And this is a further extension of that. Good people, good students are struggling from average training, and it's not their fault. I get smart people up here. I know other companies are getting smart, capable pilots, but just have been let down by the system. It's having a domino effect with operators from GA right through the airlines. The stuff that I'm hearing from airline check-in trainers is just as concerning people. This is not one case that's being inflated. It is happening with regularity. Ask any HOFO or airline check-in trainer, they'll tell you the same, and things are getting worse. So what's the solution? Do I have them all? No, of course not. But we've got some pretty good places to start. And firstly, I really do believe that it is up to industry to fix this. Now, part of the problem however, is I'm talking to the converted. I need to get this message out to people that think that their training product is awesome and you know different, right? I need to get through to the head of operations, to the CEOs, to the instructors of the flight schools out there that are producing subpar graduates. I am more than happy to talk to them. I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not here to act like the high and mighty. It's to have an educational discussion to show what is the end result of the product that they're putting out and the problems with students who are now commercial pilots who think they know more than they do and are in danger potentially to themselves, if not a problem with other operators, because now they're going to take so much more time and effort than was necessary, right? HOFOs are getting overwhelmed. The amount of training and line training they're having to do, they're not getting to fly airplanes themselves anymore. They don't have the check-in trainers in the organisations. They haven't got time to train them. I've got people up here asking me, Trent, I applied and I talked to them. I haven't heard back. It's because they haven't got time. They want to hire you desperately, but they don't have time to do it properly. And given the hassle, they'd rather deal with the shortfall than have someone else employed who's the wrong person for the job and really get nowhere. Okay, that's what's going on right now. So solutions. First thing, flight instructors. We need to have better train the trainer programs. We don't need better ones. We just need to have them. All right, we need to produce better instructors. We need to create better instructors. This is both in the 141, 142 flight school environment, but also in the 135, 121 operations as well. All right, we need to retain amazing instructors. We need to make instructing a absolute possible career path that actually pays well and you can sustain life on it. All right. I'm doing okay now, but for many, many, many years, myself or my wife were sitting at the counter at the checkout waiting for the Thursday check to clear. All right. So we could buy a trolley full of groceries. All right. I've been there. All right. It is hard. And it's not much different to being a commercial pilot too sometimes, but to be a sustainable job where you can have a family and kids and a house and everything else, we need to do better there. We need to try and attract back better industry experienced instructors back into flight schools. But the road of the rules, the regs, the way everything's all set up and the mods and all that, it is overwhelming. And so it usually gets put in the too hard basket. All right. So I'm looking at options to try and help make that process easier. Paul and I, as you know, just ran the first instructor workshop over the 5 weeks as part of our Create Better Pilots program. That program is available online. It's got about 11 hours of content over the 5 different sessions that we had. Paul's now gone down to Melbourne to deliver some training in person with a bunch of instructors. Okay, and we've got inquiries for others as well. So if you would like to know more about what we can offer, we've got something that fits all sorts of budgets. We can do online, we can do in person, we can do just ground-based, we can do flying-based, all sorts of things to help with your proficiency checks or whatever else. If you would like to know more and have us work with your organisation, then please get in touch. My contact details, and I'll put Paul's in there too with this particular episode, so you can reach out and talk to us and we'll see what we can do for you. All right, next one. We need to stop pushing students through for the sake of commercial gains and timelines. We need to stop receiving intakes of students that we can't manage. Full-time training of 1 flight a week if you're lucky? I'm sorry, no. Huge gaps in training because there's not enough instructors or aeroplanes. And I'm not talking training gaps from ground theory courses. I'm talking about we can't get to you right now because we've taken on more than we can chew. Right? That's got to stop. We need better oversight of CPL flight testing. Flight testing, from the feedback that I'm getting and seeing, is being compromised. Okay? I said it. If there's one thing that will help get the standards back up, it's the accountability of flight schools to present a truly ready and competent student ready for testing. Okay? If someone external is then assigned to conduct the test, they're going to have no choice but to make sure the paperwork's all done, the syllabus has been adhered to, and the standards are met. That is something that I really feel we've been forced down. It shouldn't have come to this. Right? The job and the responsibility we have as instructors, as training providers, as flight examiners that we do day to day is huge. But as I've been saying, and as so many of you in response to the episodes I've been putting out and the seminars I've been running, it is getting worse, and we must act now. All right. We can see the train coming. We're stuck on the tracks. We have time to get the car started and get off the tracks. We don't need to wait to be hit by the train to go, wow, didn't see that coming. All right. This is not for our egos or our profits. All right. But this is for the lives of the young aviators who put their trust in us to train them and test them for their journey ahead on behalf of the regulator and say, you are ready to go out there and learn. All right. So all I can ask for you all is, if anything I'm saying here is resonating, if you want to talk about it more, please email me, info@trentrobinsonaviation.com.au. You can talk to myself. You can talk to Paul. If you would like us to come and help and do something and talk to you, just some of this stuff costs nothing, guys. This is just a slight change in mindset in the way you go about doing things. This isn't a multi-million-dollar change in operations. This is so simple, some of this stuff. And that's probably what drives so many insane, that it's just so avoidable. And you can still have your profits. We have to make money. I get it, right? You have to make money. We're not the Salvation Army flying schools. I know that. I say that all the time. You can charge what you need to charge, but you need to produce what you need to be able to produce. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. A bit more of a heavy episode, but again, I'm going to keep banging this drum and raising more and more awareness and getting everyone on board. And I would love to have you join me as well. If I can help in any way, like I said, please reach out. All right. So next week, one more episode before Christmas. I very much look forward to you joining me then. If you'd like to support me and what I'm doing on Patreon, you can do that at patreon.com/Flight Training Australia. You can make a one-off donation, or you become a member, sign up for any of the 3 profiles there, and then help support the work that I do with these podcasts. Until next week, blue skies, and remember the golden rule: aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.